Welcome, everyone. Can you guys hear me, just to be sure?
I hear you, Christy.
All right. Thanks, Ana. Well, it is 6 o'clock, so I think we'll just go ahead and get started in the interest of time. Will introduce myself real quick. My name is Christy Kerrigan. I am the manager of the Coral Reef Conservation Program, and we've partnered with Florida Sea Grant to host a series of educational webinars. And so today you will be experiencing the reef fish identification part 1. And so I'd like to introduce Ana Zangroniz, who is with Florida Sea Grant. She's an extension agent at the IFAS Extension down in Miami-Dade County. Fun fact, she actually used to work with us at Coral Program, so we're excited to keep her in the family. But I am going to turn it over to Ana. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Christy. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us. You know, here we are a year into the world of virtual education and virtual engagement. So I understand that some of you might be feeling a little bit burnt out. I can certainly attest to being in that club. So I just want to acknowledge you for taking the time and express my gratitude for you all joining us tonight. And I'm going to give a little bit more of an intro. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to ask either Christy or our other host, Melissa, to just launch a poll question that's going to ask you folks where you're tuning in from tonight. When I was formerly with DEP's Coral program, these classes were offered through the month of April in recognition for Earth Month in the Biscayne Bay Environmental Center office, which is located in Miami. And that later expanded to include classes in the other counties within the Southeast Florida, the Florida Reef Tract county system. And now that we've gone to this virtual platform, it's been really fantastic because we've been able to connect with people, not just within Miami or Southeast Florida, but the rest of the state, the rest of the country. And even last year, we had a couple of people tuning in internationally, which is pretty fantastic. So I want to thank you guys and just ask you to go ahead in the poll and indicate where you're tuning in from. And as Christy mentioned, I am retired from DEP's Coral program, but love the opportunity to collaborate with them whenever I can. And now I'm the Florida Sea Grant Extension Agent in Miami-Dade County, and that's part of the University of Florida IFAS Extension Service. And my role is essentially to bring extension education to marine and coastal stakeholders, bring people scientific information in ways that they can not only understand, but apply, whether it be in their personal lives or in their job or both. So I think, Christy, if you can go ahead and close that poll, because I think that vanishes my screen. We can close the poll, or Christy or Melissa. Can someone confirm if they're still seeing the screen, my screen, or the poll?
We can see your PowerPoint slide, Ana, and I don't know if you want to turn on your video so folks can see you, or maybe at some point whenever you like.
I'll do that at the end just because there's so many buttons. I don't want to, oops, and I just kicked my desk. I don't want to mess something up in the platform. So I will at the end, I promise. But in case you can't tell, this is me in the lower right photo, and this is my camouflage underwater, and didn't do a very good job because I got a barracuda behind me. And if you're interested in following my program on social media, we are on Facebook and Instagram at Miami-Dade Sea Grant, and I'm happy to provide you that information later again towards the end. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. And for those of you who are signed up to participate again next week, I've divided this webinar into 2 parts. And the beginning, the intro is going to be pretty similar because I want to be able to provide the same foundation for those folks who weren't able to attend tonight. I do want to make a strong suggestion that if you are interested in anything underwater in the tropical Western Atlantic or Greater Caribbean, that you invest in either one or the set of 3 of these books. They are our go-to guides for every agency that I've worked for. They live on the boats, and they really help up your knowledge when it comes to creature and organism identification. So I'm actually going to skip through the next slide, and we're going to dive right in. And I first want to mention that pictured on the screen here is Florida's Coral Reef, which begins up here at the St. Lucie Inlet in Martin County, travels about 100 miles down to Miami-Dade County. So this is the northernmost section of the reef tract that in the last couple of years got a very special designation. So it finally has a name, and I'll let Christy or Melissa recite that because it's a mouthful and I don't know it entirely yet. But it is officially, Southeast Florida Coral Reef Ecosystem Conservation Area.
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh my gosh, I had my ginkgo biloba this morning. Okay, but I won't say it again. So we have that, which ends here about mid-Miami-Dade County. Then we have Biscayne National Park in the green. And then this larger yellow box that extends all the way out to the dried tortugas encompasses the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. And within that, we have John Pennycamp Coral Reef State Park. And down over yonder, we have Lou Key, which used to be Lou Key National Marine Sanctuary, which has now been encompassed by the Keys Sanctuary. So this is the largest barrier reef system in the continental United States and is pretty spectacular here in Florida. So some of you might have the opportunity to learn about corals or marine invertebrates in these classes, and I definitely urge you to do that because there's so much cool stuff to see underwater. And we're going to be talking about fish ID tonight. And I'm going to go with this leap of faith that everyone who's here wants to learn more about fish. Maybe you're beginning at fish ID, maybe you're an expert at fish ID, but no matter where you are, it's my goal that you learn something new, either a new strategy or a new species that will contribute to your underwater experience, whether you're a beachgoer or a snorkeler or a diver. And I promise you that once you start getting better and more intimately acquainted with what you see underwater, it's going to change your experience. It's going to improve it. So I put together a lot of these slides based off of Reef, the Reef, why am I drawing a blank? Reef Environmental Educational Foundation, which is a nonprofit based out of Key Largo. This is a presentation based off of their survey materials. And so I've also added in a couple of my own tricks and tips. And so the first that we're going to look at are basic vocabulary for describing fish. And if you're able to see my screen and hopefully my mouse moving around, you'll see that the top side of the fish is referred to as the dorsal side. The underside is referred to the ventral or bottom. Anterior is the front of the fish, and posterior, as some of you might know from going to the gym, is the rear. The dorsal fin is pretty commonly known because we think of those often in creatures like dolphins. We all know what the dolphin or whale's dorsal fin is. The caudal fin is its tail fin, which for a lot of species is responsible for its main movement. They also have pectoral fins, which are on the sides of the body, pelvic fins, which are under the body, and of course their anal fin, which is down under their body by the tail. And this nifty line that goes the length of their body, that's their lateral line, which helps with their underwater sense and movement. When we discuss basic fish ID, it's helpful to have an understanding of some of the terminology, most of which is pretty commonsensical, but if there's one thing I've learned about common sense, it's the least common of all the senses. So I like to just touch upon them and help refresh everyone's memory because it's helpful that everyone, and when I say everyone, I mean within a group of friends or a group of colleagues or within an organization, that we're all speaking the same language because that's really key in helping to learn identification skills. The first term is bars, which are essentially stripes that run vertically up and down from the dorsal down to the ventral side of the fish. Then we have stripes, which, wait for it, are horizontal lines running from the front end, the anterior side to the posterior side of the fish. I know that one was really hard, guys. Stay with me. Next up are bands, which are similar to bars. However, they form a more diagonal pattern of movement as opposed to the straight up and down of traditional bars. Next up are spots, which tend to be large, very prominent, not these over on the left. Those are what are known as speckles, but a large dot, a very distinguishable dot. The term oscillated spot simply refers to a spot that has a line circling the outside of it. Then we have blotches, which are larger than speckles, but smaller than spots, closely clustered together. Oh, I don't know where the text went on this, but these are referred to lines radiating from the eye. So it almost is like an oscillated spot, but think of it more as like a sunburst type of pattern. Here are those speckles or numerous small dots. And then any other sort of lines or thin markings of any orientation would be terminology that we use to describe some of these. I do want to mention, I recognize that I'm going a little bit quickly. I want to make sure that we have time to cover all the material and have opportunity for questions. And PDFs of this presentation will be available. I will be able to send you these after the presentation so that you can reference it. So please don't try to kill yourselves writing all of this down. Now, Reef has organized their fish ID into these 12 groups. And so for our purposes tonight, we're going to be focusing on identification groups 1 through 5, which are based largely upon morphological traits of the fish, or the way the shape and form of the fish actually look. We're going to dive right in with group 1. And this group is characterized by the shape and coloration of their body. And that, as you can see from the title, include discs and ovals and colorful. One important thing that I'd also like to note is that there are a lot of fish, and I'm going to challenge you all in a little while to take a guess as to how many fish we have here in Florida. And no Googling. I shouldn't have given that away. Sorry, don't tell anyone next week. But with the exception of Melissa Sate, who's on the phone, I don't think I know anyone who can name more than 150 or 200. So how do you learn all these? Well, you might not. However, what starts to become really useful is being able to become familiar enough with some of these defining characteristics so that you can at least get this fish down to its group or family, if not the specific species. So don't despair. I mean, it's a life goal of mine to learn all of the fish here, but I'm also pretty realistic that that's not going to happen. I have a dog. I'm very busy. All right, within this first group of fish, we are going to be looking at the butterfly fish here on the left and the angelfish as seen on the right. Now, the butterfly fish are characterized by this band that crosses through their eye and their rounded tails. And so when two of them get together in this beautiful nose-to-nose formation, what results is a lovely visual of a butterfly. The angelfish get their common name for their really beautiful and graceful trailing dorsal and anal fins. So think of like an angel's cape flowing in the wind. Hello. Oh, there we go. The first species that we're going to talk about is pretty common on Florida's coral reef, and that's the banded butterfly fish. So as I mentioned, it has that band that's going through the eye, which, I mean, I would just like to ask, can anyone put into either the chat box or the question box, what role might this band play? So I'll keep talking and let you guys throw in some guesses and wherever you can type. So it's characterized by these black bands on a silver body. And if you look in the center of the body, these lines, they have these sets of parallel lines, and they almost radiate outward from the center. And so this name includes the family, so they're in the butterfly fish family, and is also referring to their distinctive features. And as with almost all butterfly fish, you will almost never see just one. If you think you're seeing one, give it a second, and its best friend will likely fly out and greet you. Oh, I think I see some answers. Sorry, this chat box is so oddly small. I don't know if Christy or Melissa is able to see some of the answers to the question that I had.
Yeah, we've got a lot of folks saying camouflage.
Ah, fantastic. Yes, you are correct. Perfect. Yep, this is a way for butterfly fish, this particular species, to deter predators. Thanks for playing, guys. Next up is the four-eyed butterfly fish, and its common name comes from a large ocellated spot. So remembering that large spot with the ring around it. So this is a false eye spot. And so if you were to count, one spot, two spots, the third spot on the other side, and the fourth false eye spot, that gives you the common name of the four-eyed butterfly fish. So this is your main distinguishing feature here. And this one has, instead of the more parallel lines that the banded butterfly fish have, this one has these diagonal lines radiating outward and to the bottom from its center. These are really cute. I love their pointed little noses like this. And if you look closely at the face, there is a little bit of a band here going through its eye, but this false eye spot is this particular species' main adaptation to deal with predators. So if a predator is going, in theory, that predator is going for the tail, giving that fish a chance to get away, excuse me. Next is the spot fin butterfly fish, which looks quite similar at first glance to the four-eyed butterfly fish. However, it has all yellow fins, a very distinct black band going through the eye, and then it has its own version of the false eye spot, but it's far less prominent than in the four-eyed butterfly fish. So mostly white body, all white fins, band through the eye, and then that teeny tiny false eye spot on its tail. We're going to transition and flutter away from the butterfly fish and move into the angelfish family. And this fish is one of my favorites because it's so pretty. Just look at this. The queen angelfish it can get to about a foot long, and it's got this gorgeous, beautiful, brilliant blue color with yellow undertones to its scales. And its main giveaway is this, not a false eye spot, but this blue spot on its forehead, which in Reef's set of memory clues that they like to use, they call that a jewel on the queen's crown. So you'll see it, the queen angelfish also has blue speckles around its face. And this fish was the one I showed in the beginning that had those really prominent trailing dorsal and anal fins. The French angelfish are also really common. Their name is not anything significant to the way they look, but they're black and gray with these yellow scales. And they also have gold edges on those fins, gold ring around the eye. And one of Reef's memory clues, again, that they like to use is that they compare these yellow scales to the rows of gold metal on the uniform of a French general. Or you could also think of it as though the scales had been dipped in French's mustard. I'm going to put in the disclaimer that memory clues are different for every person. And if you have memory clues for a particular fish that you like, please share those in the chat too, because I'm always looking for other ideas to help communicate that will resonate with people. Last up not last up, I got ahead of myself. Next up in our angelfish family is the gray angelfish, which, as you might guess, got its name because it's all gray. I forgot to mention earlier that what we're looking at tonight, we're looking at the adult or terminal phases of these fish. Several species of fish look differently when they start out as little babies to a juvenile or intermediate phase before they become and change to adults. And I'll let you in on a secret. The juvenile gray angelfish and the juvenile French angelfish are actually extremely similar when they are young. So for our purposes, to make life a little bit easier, we're going to be focusing on just the adult or terminal phases. So these guys have a white mouth, all gray body. It's a little difficult to see in this particular photo, but again, those trailing dorsal and anal fins are present on the gray angelfish. The last fish in this family that we're going to be looking at is the rock beauty, which is the only angelfish that doesn't have the title of angel in its common name. This is a really pretty fish. It has a rounded caudal or tail fin and is characterized by this bright yellow forebody and the majority of the rest of its body with dark black or brown coloration. Some of them also have their anal tail with slight color variations as well. So these are also, they can get pretty large, certainly larger, or they're probably the smallest out of the four that we talked about, and the largest out of the four angelfish that we looked at would be the queen. We're going to move into the surgeonfish family, and if you are familiar with the film Finding Nemo, Dory was actually a member of the surgeonfish family. So that always, I don't know, that makes me smile when I think of it. You know, everybody knows Nemo the clownfish, and Dory doesn't get as much hype, although her movie helped a little bit, I think. But these surgeonfish can be grayish or brown with parts of blue on them, and they get their common name because they have what's known as a, quote, scalpel. So this little barb on the area that connects their body to their tail, which is actually called the caudal peduncle. And so that's a barb that's for their own self-defense. And these fish can be found usually in large groups. Sometimes they're solitary, but the thing that I want you to remember here is that they're plant eaters. So we love the surgeonfish. They help keep the reef. They mow the lawn on the reef and help graze on algae and other plant matter underwater. Now we had the ocean surgeon, now we have the doctorfish. The shape and the size of these fish and the body design are pretty close to identical, but they also have the scalpel or the spine on their, close to their tail. Can anyone guess as to the main visual difference between the doctors and the surgeons, or the surgeonfish and the doctorfish? Can Melissa or Christy give me an update?
We have one answer that says bars.
Aha, yes, thank you, yes. So the memory clue that I like to use, that I actually learned at the National Aquarium in Baltimore when I was a volunteer diver, was that doctors are dirty. So that's why they have these markings on the body. No offense to any doctors who might be in this webinar tonight. That's just one trick. But so the bars, the vertical bars on the body, but I will caution you that those aren't always visible. The fish can change their color, and not their color, but the intensity of how light or dark they are. So what you really want to look for is the clear tissue between the pectoral fin rays, and that can be a little challenging because fish usually don't like to sit still for us to try and identify them. Next up in the surgeonfish group is the blue tang. And I'm sorry, I meant to say that Dory was a blue tang, not a surgeonfish. I got too excited. On a blue tang, their body, when they're juvenile, I just have to point this out because they're so cute. They're these little guys, they look like a toy fish, but they're yellow when they're juveniles. And I bring this up only because there is an Indo-Pacific fish that's the yellow tang. So if you see this fish here, don't you know, don't get worried. It's not an invasive. It is likely a little baby blue tang. And what you're looking for is their barb on the base of their tail is yellow. And these fish, these blue tangs, like to flock in huge aggregations. So you'll never, it's rare, I shouldn't say never because Mother Nature writes her own rules, but you'll often see a whole school of them, and they'll have a hitchhiker or two that are riding along with them. They're pretty phenomenal. And that's a little more common in the Caribbean, but I have seen it here in Florida also. Now, normally I would have you guys shout this out, but you're muted. So, you know, you can shout at the computer screen, but I encourage you to type your answers in the chat box. So I'm going to put up pictures and you're going to tell me what you think these are. And if you're not comfortable down to the species level, go ahead and try and guess the family or the group. And as you're thinking through this, I'm going to try and see if I can pull up the chat so I can see stuff on my own.
It's mostly in the questions people are answering.
In the, yeah, see that's, yeah, okay, I was able to pop it out. All right. All right, are we getting team angelfish? I don't know if that was in this. Okay, maybe I might have just given away the answer. So we'll keep going. Oh, sorry, that was not angelfish. That is a spot fin butterfly fish. All right, any guesses as to this fish? All right, this is an ocean surgeonfish. I'm going to close this questions box because I feel like I'm asking for trouble. If you guessed queen angelfish, you were correct. This is a rock beauty. Oh my gosh, I do this every time. I need to switch those pictures. I apologize. The image you saw a few back, that was a blue tang, and this is the ocean surgeonfish. And I can tell that looking at the clear tissue between the pectoral fins. So note to self, swap those pictures. Here we've got a French angelfish, excuse me, gray angelfish. I really need some tea or caffeine or something. Sorry, guys. Dr. Fish, so we've got those bars. Banded butterfly fish. French angelfish. And last but not least, the 4-eye butterfly fish. All right, moving on. In this next group, we are looking at silvery fish and specifically jacks, barracuda, and lookdown. And they're all silvery, which if you look at the group name, it's going to be pretty easy to determine why. And that's because their coloration helps them blend in with their primary habitats, either being open water or bright sand. This is the barjack, which gets its name from this large, or I shouldn't say large, but rather long black bar that goes from its body and extends onto its tail. Usually under the black bar, you have a slightly lighter blue bar. So they've got the silvery body and this black, what Reef likes to call, crowbar down its body. They can get up to 2 feet long, and you'll either see them as one or you'll see a whole flock of them. And you'll often see these at mooring buoys. They tend to frequent where there's a lot of fishing activity. And they're very opportunistic predators. I'm willing to bet the majority of you know this fish, the great barracuda. They can get up to 4 to 5 feet long, and they get this reputation for being a little scary, although there are no known reports of any sort of unprovoked attacks on people. So they get a bad reputation because they've got this scary underbite with their, you know, look like it could rip your face off teeth. But, you know, they're ambush predators. They hang around, they'll get really close. And I used to hear it was an urban legend that they were attracted to shiny things, and I dismissed that but I've confirmed that that is actually true. So note to self and note to you, if you're in the water, take off your jewelry. There's no need for it. Let's not play with the barracuda today. The last fish in this group are the look down. And they can get about a foot long, and similar to the angelfish, they have these really neat trailing dorsal and anal fins. And they're called look downs, but I tend to think of them as squash fish. So as if a fish just ran into or got smushed between two panes of glass. And if you look at them face on, that's how they look too. And they've got this very steep sloping forehead and almost a squarish shape of their body. And you'll often see them in these large groups. They're pretty impressive when you see them all underwater. To review, we have the barjack with the crowbar along the top of its body, the look down, and the great barracuda. We're moving now into fish that are starting to look more what we think of as a quote traditional fish, or fish that you might find at the end of your hook and line. And that's the group of the sloping head and tapered body. These are families whose members have a basic fish-like shape. And I would just want you to note that grunts tend to congregate by the reef in groups, whereas snappers are often more solitary in nature. So we'll talk about examples of each coming up very soon. The first grunt that we're going to look at is the French grunt, and these are very common here in Southeast Florida. They've got these alternating yellow and or silverish blue stripes, and in the center of their body, that horizontal stripe pattern is disrupted by diagonal stripes, or you could almost call them bars, but they're really too thin technically to be bars. But in the middle of their body, those horizontal stripes change to be diagonal. If these fish open up its mouth, which sometimes you'll see two fish doing that, they'll have their mouth open almost like they're kissing. If you open their mouths, or if they open their mouths, you'll see the inside of the mouth are red. And fun fact, if you do see two fish engaging in what you might think is a, questionable romantic behavior, it's actually they're displaying form. They're being aggressive towards each other. That's their way of duking it out on the streets or on the reef. And these fish have all yellow fins. Reef's memory clue here is to think about these diagonal stripes as designer stripes from Paris, hence French grunt. This fish, the blue striped grunt, is a little similar, but they grow larger. You'll usually see these larger than the French grunts. And they've got these definite blue and yellow stripes throughout the body. But if you notice, the dorsal fin and the tail fin are black, and their pectoral, pelvic, and anal fins are all yellow. And the larger the fish, the more stripes that they have. They've also got these blue stripes and blotches on their face as well. They've also got pretty thick lips for a grunt and no teeth that are outwardly visible. The white grunt is another common resident on our reefs. They can grow up to anywhere from, it says 8 to 14, but yeah, we've seen them 8 to 10 to 12 inches. And their body is all whitish gray in tone, but they have those similar yellow and blue stripes, but only on the front part of their body, on their face. So if you were to cover with using your hand in front of your screen, if you were to cover the back half of the body, the front of this fish would look quite similar to the blue striped grunt. So what you're looking for in this fish is this coloration pattern right here. Just to give you guys a quick back and forth to look. This is the porkfish, which is one of my favorites. I think it's super cool. Silver and yellow stripes, all yellow fins, and then its main distinguishing feature that is like no other are these two bands on the front part of their body. The little babies of this fish are super cute. See, I'm trying to nudge you guys to open that Reef Fish ID book and look at the juvenile pictures also. But these are unmistakable. Once you get this, it's got this more blunt shaped head versus the white or the blue striped grunt. So the head on this fish is almost looking more like those look downs that we saw a few moments ago. Now moving into the snapper family, this particular species bends or even breaks the rules a lot about the solitary nature, because I almost never see one gray snapper. You might hear the term mangrove snapper. That's referring to the same fish. It's just another name for it, the mangrove or the gray snapper. And it's pretty unremarkable when it's in this particular form. It can also, its body color can change a little bit depending on whether it's residing in lighter water or darker water. And it also has a band over its eye that it can lighten or darken to help deter from predation. Schoolmaster snapper looks really similar to the gray mangrove. However, it has all yellow fins. These can get a little bit bigger, and on a lot of the fish, you'll see a very prominent canine tooth, a little snaggle tooth sticking out from its upper lip there. And it's the only one in the snapper family that doesn't have the actual word snapper in its common name. So if you hear the word schoolmaster, you're going to know by default that it's in the snapper family. So that's just something that you're going to need to commit to memory. And another thing that you can use to help you identify this fish is thinking about the all yellow fins as the yellow color of a school bus. The yellowtail snapper is often associated with a lot of recreational and commercial fishing here in Southeast Florida. Its body is a little bit different from the other snappers that we've looked at. It's a little bit more streamlined and has a slightly more deeply forked tail. Or in other words, the shape of the fork resembles a V, a deeper V. The schoolmaster snapper has this top yellow dorsal fins as well as the yellow tail fin, and this stripe that goes through the eye down the length of the body and spots on the upper half of the body. If any of you have ever been snorkeling, especially in the Florida Keys, as soon as the boat pulls up to the site, you have a whole fan club, and it's the yellowtail snapper, because they're often fed on a lot of these trips. So they associate boats with getting a free buffet, and they will hang out with you and barely move out of the way before you jump in the water. Now we're going to look quickly at this group that we just talked about. Here we have the yellow and blue stripes, the thick blubbery lips, yellow fins but black dorsal and black tail. That is the blue stripe grunt. Here's this pretty unremarkable body, and imagining that you can see, using your imagination, that band turning on over the fish's eye. This is the mangrove snapper. In this picture, it looks pretty similar to the white grunt. However, what it lacks are the blue stripes on the face. Oops. This is the French grunt. Here are the designer diagonal stripes, the designer stripes. Schoolmaster. Yellowtail snapper. And the porkfish. I know you guys all got 100%. Now we're going to go down in size a little bit and talk about a couple of groups that we see that are a little bit smaller than the last few species that we looked at. And we're specifically going to talk about the damselfishes and the hamlets. This fish, the brown chromies, is in the damselfish family. And it's correctly called the brown chromies, but for some reason I always want to call it the gray chromies. So if you hear me say that, call me on it, because it's just, I don't know why I keep doing that. And I even write that on my fish surveys and then I have to fix it. But these guys are pretty little. They have really small mouths, which are indicative of the fact that they like to pick plankton from the water column. So they'll float around either in the water column or hover just above the reef, and they'll use the reef for protection when predators approach. So pretty drab in color, not all that, not all that special to look at when you consider all the other fish that we have here. You'll also take note of the deeply forked tail. The blue chromies, so if this guy was the ugly duckling of this particular group, the blue chromies is the swan, although they're all beautiful in my heart. The blue chromies is extremely similar in size and shape, and they hang out pretty close to the bottom. They are also plankton pickers. They're this brilliant blue, indigo, some might say purple, but are characterized by their dark eye and this band that goes all the way down their body and continues onto their tail. And these fish feed on high concentrations of zooplankton. They're not shy, but they won't necessarily hang out and be nose to nose with you through your mask. Now, what I just said all changes when we get to the damselfish family. And the bicolor damsel is the smallest and one of the most common that you'll see here. They have a two-tone body, black and white, or you'll see dark brown and white. And these are often 2 to 3 inches in length. And damselfish in general establish these little algae gardens, and they can be very territorial. They will live in clusters of many sizes and of both sexes, and they also feed on plankton carried by currents. And these are fish, not just this species, but other species within the family that they will not hesitate to get up in your face, peck at your fins or your mask. The yellow-tailed damselfish, this is one of the largest in this family. They can grow up to 6 or 7 inches long. And as they mature, their body is more or less this brownish gray color with a yellow tail fin. When they're babies, they are really, really beautiful. I encourage you to screenshot this so you don't forget, but look them up when they're babies. They're super pretty. They're brilliant blue with these little glowing dots. And I know I said I wasn't going to talk about babies, but I can't help it because they're so cute. So they can change their coloration when they need to or want to. They can change the tone to be a little bit lighter or darker as they need it. Now, the sergeant major, this might look familiar to a lot of you guys. These are another one of the larger species in the damselfish family. And sergeant majors in a lot of areas will challenge the bicolor damsels for the most popular or the most prolific in an area. And they get their common names from their bars, the black bars that alternate with the yellowish coloration of their body. So these have been named, they get their name because it almost, to someone, look like a uniform, like a military uniform. And these damselfish they lay eggs, and they lay these dark purple egg nests. It almost looks like if you were to imagine mold in your home, which we don't want it in your home, but imagine that underwater. And they will very ferociously and protectively guard their egg nests. And if you get too close to the egg nest, you will feel little blinks or boop, and that's the damselfish without fear going up to a predator that is clearly larger than it is, saying, "Get away from my egg nest." They're pretty unmistakable. All right, we're going to only talk about one hamlet today, and the hamlet is actually a palm-sized member of the sea bass family. And it's included here in this group because of its relative size and shape to the damselfish. And this is the barred hamlet, which is characterized by this very thick, especially in comparison to the rest of the body, this very thick brown bar down the center of the body. The barred hamlet also has these really shiny, iridescent blue stripes and speckles or dots on its face. Now, it's a little tricky to tell from here, but the barred hamlet can actually open their mouths. They have quite large mouths in relative proportion to the rest of their body, and that's indicative of the fact that they're carnivores. So they open their mouths really large because they're really packing it in there. And there's a whole other, there's at least five or six other hamlets that are common to this area. But this is just one, and so average size, maybe 4 inches. All right, we're going to review this family. First, we have here the yellow damselfish. Next up, Sergeant Major. This is the barred hamlet. Here is the bicolored damsel. Blue chromies. Brown chromies. I had to really think of it, guys, because I almost said gray chromies again. All right. This is going to be the last of our groups that we're going to look at tonight, and then we're going to do a couple of other review activities that I hope you'll enjoy. The last group gets its group name from its major characteristics, and that involves the heavy bodies and large lips of these fish. So we're really talking about mostly fish that are in the group or families. And so they have very robust bodies. Most of them are bottom dwellers. They can change their coloration or patterns of their colors that are on their bodies. And some of them are even hermaphroditic or sex changing. And these are going to go from species including the groupers to the basslets, and all of them have long and continuous dorsal fins. First up is the Nassau grouper. I love this fish. It's super pretty, and it looks very similar to the red grouper that we're going to look at momentarily, but its main distinguishing feature is this black saddle spot, which is on its caudal peduncle. All right, so this is Reef's memory clue for this fish, and think of it as ride the saddle spot to Nassau, the Nassau grouper. If you'll note here, these are prohibited from fishing in Florida. They were so overfished that you are not allowed to keep them at all if you find them. And so that doesn't seem to be, it's not so much a problem for hook and line fishing, but if you're spear fishing, you really want to make absolutely certain about what you're about to release your spear onto, because you don't want to accidentally shoot one of these guys. So you've got these bands on the forebody and then more vertical red and white bars and splotches towards the tail.
Hey, Anna.
Here is the, oh yes.
We had a quick question because I don't think you actually included it in your sort of assigning of all the parts of a fish, but someone asked what a caudal peduncle was.
Oh, thank you for that question. And I'm sorry if I didn't say it before. So the caudal peduncle, the easiest way to describe it, if we look at this photo of the tiger grouper that's on the screen, I think my mouse just disappeared. Oh, can you guys see my mouse? Oh, there it is. Here is the tail of the fish. Here is roughly the end of the body. So this little fleshy area this muscle that connects the body with the tail is referred to as the caudal peduncle. The tail is more appropriately known as the caudal fin. So this little area is the caudal peduncle. It's really fun to say out loud. So when we think through the saddle spot on the Nassau grouper, it's located on that same area, the caudal peduncle. All right. Thank you for that question. All right, tiger grouper. These are really cool, and you have to do a little bit of math here and count because they have 9 broad bands covering their body. So I challenge you to do that when the fish is potentially in motion, but it is possible. And so those bands are actually made up of they're almost like really closely spaced polka dots. And all of their fins are rimmed in black. And the adults can reach up to about 3 feet long. And this particular species is often found in cleaning stations where you'll find smaller fish that are picking parasites off of them. If you look here at the front of the fish towards the mouth, you'll see that it's pretty red on the inside of the mouth. The Graysby is a common sight on our reefs in South Florida, and it also gets the common name of strawberry grouper. However, if you're fishing and you catch a fish and you open your fishing regulations guide, you just want to make sure you know that this is the Graysby, because you will not find a strawberry grouper in that regulations booklet, and this fish is regulated by FWC, by the state. So this body is grayish brown and it has these reddish orange dots completely covering it. But what you're looking for in the Graysby, aside from its more rounded tail fin, are these 3 to 5 dots that are right along the base of the dorsal fin. And these spots, they might be black or they might be white, and you might see them change color while looking at them. But they're a pretty common sight, and they are much smaller in size. They don't grow nearly as large as the tiger grouper or the Nassau. The black grouper, this one can get pretty big, 2 to 3 feet. And it's got, if you look at the Graysby, if you look at the Graysby, which has a slightly more rounded tail, the black grouper has this more emarginate or flatter edge tail. And all of the fins, again, have black on them. Most of the time that you see this fish, it will look whitish or gray, but it can also change its coloration to blend in with its surroundings. This is a fish that is targeted for fishing a lot, and therefore in Southeast Florida, it pretty much, as soon as it sees you, all you're going to see is this tail fin shooting away from you. It's going to be getting out of there as quickly as possible. On the other hand, we have the red grouper, which you might hear referred to as the Labradors of the sea. These guys are reddish brown in color with these white mottled flecks. They can look very similar. They're similar size and shape to the Nassau grouper. However, they're missing that back saddle spot over here. This is also another pretty important fish, both commercially and recreationally speaking, but it is a lot more approachable underwater. Last up in this group, we have the Goliath grouper, which gets its common name because it is the largest reef fish here in the tropical Western Atlantic. And it can grow up to about 8 feet long, 700 to 800 pounds. And it's got these really thick, blubbery lips, the very rounded tail fin, and it has 2 dorsal fins. Well, it's one connected, but the rear one is a little bit more rounded than the spikier 4 dorsal fin. And I'll give you a quick pro tip that when the tail is more rounded, when the tail on a fish is more rounded, that's indicative that the fish is a slow swimmer. And I'm putting air quotes around the slow because even though it's slow, it's still way faster than we can swim. Versus when you think about a fish that has a deeply forked tail like the yellowtail snapper, those fish can move a lot more quickly. I do also want to note that the Goliath grouper is prohibited from take. You cannot keep it, you cannot harvest it here in the US or Florida. Ooh, okay, we're through these. Nice, okay. Guesses, guys. What do we have here on the screen? This was an easy. We just left with this one. All right, Goliath. Oh, look at that. Goliath grouper, you are correct. Here we've got this reddish brown body, no saddle spot. All right, red grouper, nice. We've got our 9 bands that are made up of brownish red polka dots. Tiger grouper, nicely done. All right, here are a couple of different variations of the same fish. A more flattened end of the tail, black on the fins. All right, black grouper. I feel like now that I can see the chat, I'm starting to think you guys knew most of this already. So I hope you're still getting a little nugget of inspiration here. All right, what do we have out of the groupers that we looked at tonight? This is the smallest. Strawberry grouper, yeah. Yep, the Graysby.
There was actually a question about the Graysby.
Yeah.
What are the dots for?
I don't know that they're for anything exactly. And I might toss this over. Once we get through the next few slides, I might punt this back to Melissa because she's so good at fish ID. She knows all the scientific names. I don't know that they're for anything aside from just being part of their biology, their outward appearance. All right, last one in this review section. All right, Nassau grouper, yeah, so we've got the reddish brown color, this pattern of the red and white bands on the forebody and the vertical bars on the back, but then there's that saddle splotch. Yeah, ride the saddle to Nassau. Okay, so I wanted to throw a picture up here and I'm just gonna circle a couple of fish and I want you guys to try and guess what they are, because when we do reef fish surveys, this is often the kind of thing that we are charged with figuring out, not just identifying what we're seeing, but counting them and trying to come up with size. So first things first, I hope you can see the pink circle that's more or less the center of my screen. All right, porkfish, yeah, nicely done. Okay, next, oh, ignore this one, I'm sorry, ignore that. I forgot to take that out because we didn't cover that tonight. Yes, it is a stoplight parrotfish, nice job. Sorry, let's redirect to the third circle here on the center right of your screen. Not a mutton snapper, not a white snapper, a gray or a mangrove snapper, yes. The white grunt, it does look really similar, but the white grunt's head is a little bit more steeply sloped and the white grunt has the blue lines on its face. Good job. Okay, I have one more. Where's my circles? Oh, sorry, ignore the one on the lower right, and I just want you to focus on the second circle that popped up that's in the lower third of the screen. Yeah, I saw blue-headed wrasse, good job. Yes, French grunts. You see, you got a bunch of French grunts mixed in with a bunch of blue stripe grunts. Oh, and I just gave that away. But there they are. All right. Oh, it's a little bit challenging to see the fourth circle that I'm using my mouse to highlight here. If you look closely, it's a mostly grayish white body. The fins are grayish white. There are no yellow fins. And it's a little tough to see, but on the face are the blue stripes that are only on the face. Yeah, white grunt, nice. All right. So with that, I know I threw a lot at you guys. Really quick, because I had a couple more poll questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. I wanted to just make my shameless plug for a webinar series that I started with my colleagues last year during the pandemic, because, everyone needs to have a webinar series. So we're keeping it going, but we've scaled down. So now every month on the second Wednesday of the month at 12, we're doing 30-minute webinars that are conservation themed. So the one this month is next week on April 14th, involving the conservation of the Miami blue butterflies in the Florida Keys. So I'm happy to send you information about that. And before we leave, I'm going to give you my contact information, but I just wanted to close it out with a joke to send you guys off on your night and hopefully start your weekend with a smile. So why did the fish blush? And you can guess, you can throw it in the chat. But if you don't know, it's because it saw the ocean's bottom. So I just, I like cheesy jokes. I can never make them up, but Google is helpful. So I will be happy to take questions. I recognize that it's 7 o'clock. I'm gonna turn on my webcam, I think. Can you all, oh, there I am. Okay, good. Hello. So I wanna thank you all again. I recognize it was a lot of material. I believe this was being recorded, and these recordings are going to be available through the Florida Department of Environmental Protection's YouTube, I think YouTube, or they're going to share a link, but either way, you'll be able to access this. I am also more than happy to share this PowerPoint with you, and next week's session will be a review of some of those morphology techniques and body descriptions in the beginning, and then we'll pick up with the latter half of the fish groups that we did not cover tonight. So I hope that you all can make it. Oh, my dog's coming to join me. And I'm happy to stay on and answer questions. So please put those in, and Christy and Melissa. And I might punt back to Melissa. I'll circle back about the Graysby. The dots on the Graysby's back.
I venture to guess. I actually don't know either, but I'm thinking it's like a reproduction purpose, maybe. I don't know.
Sure. Cool. Well, actually, so since you can screenshot my email, but Christy and Melissa, we had another poll question, and can one of you launch the how many fish species live here or how many are found on Florida's coral reef? And if you guys just send me an email and indicate that you'd like the webinar link, I can send that to you, and your email will not be shared or spammed or anything. So just curious, I meant to do this in the beginning, but approximately how many fish are found on Florida's coral reef? Is it 200 fish, 500 species, fish species, 200 species, 500 species, 600 species, or 800 species? And I just dribbled water all over my shirt. And I don't know if I put my email here, if you guys will be able to get it. Send to all. Okay. I just attempted to put my email in the questions box. All right, looks like almost everyone. Are you able to show results, Christy and Melissa?
I
Does it
think
show the results?
so. Here we go.
All right, so for those of you who guessed C, you were correct. There are approximately 600 species of fish. I almost gave that away earlier, but about 600 species of fish that are found here in Florida, which is pretty freaking cool.
Anna, can you answer how people sign up for conservation conversations?
Yes. Yes, I can. Let me figure out how to stop my share. And as I'm thinking through and trying to multitask and not mess everything up, I'll drop a line, I'll drop the link for that into the chat box. Were you all able to access my email address? Did you see that?
I think, Anna, as a host, we really only respond to questions that come in. So your chat came in as a response to Dale Pratt's question at 7:01.
Okay, well, I'm putting it in the chat. I just put it in the chat box. So I guess that's from us to you guys. I just put the link to that in the chat box, and I will also put my email address in there as well. So you can always reach out to me with questions or to get the PDF of this PowerPoint. So hopefully you all can see that. We see your email and the link. Yay, things are happening. Good. I'm more of a Zoom fan, but you know, we got to work with what we got. And so at least we're able to all be together here.
Yeah, all of these webinars will be recorded and they will be made available. And it should be sent out if you had registered for this. So I think you'll just get an email with the link.
Cool. Thank you. And for those of you who want to keep hanging on, I'll ask Christy and Melissa to throw up the last poll question about the length of Florida's coral reef. And if any of you guys are tuning in next week and you see these questions, don't give away the answers, okay? So we got to challenge the people who are joining for the first time. Thanks for joining us, Sidra. All right, so if you're seeing this, yeah, I just moved it. Okay, there it is. I just moved the menu and it disappeared and then it reappeared. About how long is Florida's coral reef? And we say about because there are tons of different measurements. There's miles as we know them in a car. There are linear miles, there are nautical miles. So we're just using miles just to make it a little bit easier for everybody to wrap their minds around. So is it A, 105 miles, B, 225 miles, C, 350 miles, or D, 500 miles? Come here, come here. All right, looks like people are doing it. All right, can Christy or Melissa please close the poll and share the results? Nice, if you chose C, 350 miles, you are correct. And if you're familiar with the geography of South Florida, that is about the distance, the driving distance from Miami to Jacksonville. So that's a whole lot of reef. It's pretty fantastic. And I see that Rodney asked a question, what can divers do to ensure survival of all? There are tons of different things that we can do both on land and in the water. And I'll briefly cover a couple of those things. When we think about things that we do on land, because especially here in Florida, and if you live in other coastal areas, it's probably very similar, but everything we do here in Southeast Florida ultimately is connected with our water bodies, whether they're estuaries or river systems or open ocean like we have here in our 5-county Southeast Florida region. So, you know, watering your lawn, taking care to irrigate properly, not overwater, follow all sorts of guidance and recommendations when it comes to landscaping and choices of how to fertilize, if to fertilize, minimizing those practices. What else? There's so many. I mean, water conservation is huge. Creating a rain barrel in your home is really great because you can use that. You can collect water that you get for free and use that to irrigate your plants or wash your car versus turning on your hose. And that's also really important because we have such a we have such porous limestone, all of these porous limestone under our soil, it's really important to especially be mindful of what's, running off your house and running off the pavement and into the storm drains or seeping through the soil. Divers, there are tons of different programs that divers can participate in. DEP, Christy's program, runs a program called CFAN, which is an underwater marine observer network that asks for people, boaters, snorkelers, divers, people who are on and in the water, to report any sort of marine disturbances. And there's a phone number and an online form. It doesn't require any sort of specialized training, but simply the who, what, when, why, how, or where. So if you see a fish kill or a weird substance or sewage in the water, these are all the types of things that are really important for different management groups to know about, so then they can respond appropriately. There are also different programs for divers and snorkelers, like the CFAN Bleach Watch program, which trains observers how to identify and report coral bleaching. And that's particularly important as we get into the summer, as the ocean starts getting a little bit warmer, because that's our hottest and grossest part of the year here in Southeast Florida. I also run a similar program to Bleach Watch that is specific to monitoring and observing for stony coral tissue loss disease. So it's very similar, and I work with divers to do that, to take advantage of the times that they are going on dives, to arm them with some skills so they know what they're looking at, and then they can observe it and report it. Reef also, the Reef Environmental Educational Foundation, they also offer the opportunity to do fish surveys, which they have this huge database of reef fish surveys. So using the skills that you either started gaining tonight or improved upon tonight, you can survey and count fish, not like 1, 2, 3, 4, but estimate. And they have a database that collects that information also. And there are other similar programs through Reef. Coral Restoration Foundation has opportunities for divers that I think are starting to open up now that we're easing into a new normal. And in the Keys, there are dive operations that are doing large-scale marine debris removals that came with some funding after Hurricane Irma. So removing a lot of things like derelict lobster traps and fishing line. And DEP's coral program historically has run similar events in the Southeast Florida region. I'm not certain about this summer though, that might still be to be determined. So hopefully that answered your question, Rodney. It was a long answer to your short question. But also, just generally speaking, being good stewards of our environment and supporting science-based policy suggestions, that's the biggest thing that I can say. Cool. Come here. For those of you who might be interested. And this is my he's my other reef steward. He likes to go paddleboarding with me. He likes spotted eagle rays. They're his favorite. So if you guys are cohabitating or co-working with kids or dogs or cats, my hat's off to you. So please stay tuned and sign up for all the great classes that DEP's Coral program is putting on. There's something for everybody, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I want to thank you all again. I think we'll go ahead and sign off if all the questions are done.
Thank you so much, Ana. This was amazing. And thank you, Melissa, for your help too with tech support and tracking questions. And thank you all for joining and tuning in tonight. This was a great treat. We have lots of other webinars that you can join the rest of the month, and definitely join part 2 of this class. And yeah, please don't hesitate to ever reach out with any questions.
Join part 2.
Thank you all.
Join part 2.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night, everybody.